Broadcasting live on YouTube, Facebook, and X. Here's your host, Andrew Romanella.
Okay? Like, just get the hell out of here. Nobody cares what you think if you're not a Mets fan.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome into another edition of The Rome Show, broadcasting live on YouTube, Twitter, X, and Instagram. I am your host, Andrew Romanella. We got you for the next 25 or 30 minutes, and we'll be breaking down all of the top stories in sports, including the Toronto Blue Jays winning the American League pennant last night for the first time since 1993. The double whammy of Monday Night Football games we got last night, one in Detroit and then one in Seattle, and all of the top stories from around the major sports leagues. I mentioned in the open, we are broadcasting live on youtube.com/The Romanellas. That's youtube.com/The Romanellas. Head over there, hit subscribe for all of the latest content on the YouTube channel. The Rome Show 1. That's The Rome Show, then the number 1 on Twitter, X, and Instagram. Lastly, the OG social media website, facebook.com/The Rome Show. You can comment live on any of those sites and get in on the discussions throughout the day. Oh, yeah. And if you missed any of it, the Rome Show podcast, wherever you listen to podcasts. Let's start with the American League Championship Series last night, which saw the Toronto Blue Jays defeat the Seattle Mariners by a score of 4-3, thanks to a 3-run, 7th-inning home run by a guy who has been in clutch moments many of times before in his career. His name is George Springer. And Springer didn't even know if he'd be able to play in Game 6 and in Games 7, but he made the most of his opportunity. He had 2 combined hits in the last 3 games. That equated to 10 at-bats, but none bigger than the 3 RBI homer last night in the bottom of the 7th inning that sent the Blue Jays to the World Series for the first time since 1993. On the flip side, very sad for the Seattle Mariners. That would have been the first appearance in the World Series in the history of the Seattle Mariners franchise. They've been to the ALCS 4 times in the history of their organization, and they have missed the World Series by a combined 5 games. And they went into Game 6 with a 3-2 series lead, and sadly are going home without a berth in the World Series. They might have the best player in Cal Raleigh on their team. They might have the AL MVP on their team, but they will not be headed to the World Series. Now you have a Toronto Blue Jays versus Los Angeles Dodgers World Series that's going to get started this coming Friday. I just want to say this real quick before we move on from baseball, because plenty of time this week to break down the World Series matchup. Are the Toronto Blue Jays good enough to knock the Dodgers off? Will the Dodgers win the first back-to-back World Series since the Yankees in the early 2000s? We got a lot of time to break that stuff down. But I've been reading some things about the success or lack of success in terms of the Seattle this season. Okay? And I got to be honest, all right? I don't see how this wasn't a successful season for the Seattle Mariners. If there's anybody out there that doesn't think that the season the Seattle Mariners had was successful is recklessly mistaken. Okay? I don't subscribe to you make it to a game away from the World Series and your season is a bust. Okay? 99.9% of the time, if you are losing in game 7 of the championship series, much like the Seattle Mariners lost last night, okay, your season was an insane success. That's just a fact. And there's no one, not one person, zero, zilch, nada, that thought the Seattle Mariners would be as good and as deep as they were last night. Not one person. If I would have told every Mariners fan to a person on April 1st, hey, just letting you know, you're going to go through this next 6 months, and it's going to culminate in a Game 7 American League Championship Series on the road in Toronto with George Kirby on the hill, would you take it? Yes. Yes. 100% of the time. And then if I went deeper and said Julio Rodriguez and Cal Raleigh both homer in this game, you'd be like, hell yeah. Sign me up. Sign me up. And it's just, that is baseball, man. That is baseball. The momentum swings unbelievably quick. 2-0 series lead Seattle, 2-2 series tie Toronto, 3-2 series lead Seattle, 2 wins back-to-back at home. Toronto's going to the World Series. But none of it should bring down the Seattle Mariners fan today. They can be sad. They can be upset. They can be disturbed. 2-0 series lead, 3-2 series lead, 3-1 lead in the 7th inning of Game 7, and you're not in the World Series? Yes, you have every right to be disappointed, but you have no right to say that this was a failed season. This could be one of the greatest seasons you ever seen in Seattle Mariners history. And unfortunately, it means you're still the only franchise who has not made a World Series. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is why being a sports fan is so difficult. That, ladies and gentlemen, is why sports are so frustrating as much as they are meant to be so fun. So Friday, October 24th, will be pitch number 1 for this World Series matchup, 8 p.m. And I believe the host of this thing is the Toronto Blue Jays, because they were the American League East champions, whereas the Dodgers were not. So Toronto not only wins at home last night, but now they get to stay in Canada for the next week and play the first 2 games on their home turf. The Rome Show with you for another 20 minutes or so. YouTube.com/the Romanellas, Twitter X and Instagram. The Rome Show 1. That's the Rome Show, then the number 1. Facebook.com/the Rome Show. We had a 2-pack of Monday Night Football last night. In game 1, the Buccaneers and the Lions, with the Lions coming out victorious 24-9. And in game number 2, we had the Seattle Seahawks versus the Houston Texans, with the Seattle Seahawks coming away victorious at 27-19. Starting in game number 1, the kudos has to go to the Detroit Lions defense. They held this Buccaneers team to 228 yards through the air and only 41 yards on the ground. The Bucs did not surpass 300 total yards in the contest. And I got to be honest with you, it wasn't even just that it was a tough game for the Bucs. Nothing looked easy. It almost looked like to gain a yard was hard, to lose a yard was hard, to complete or incomplete pass. Like, anything on the football field was difficult for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers yesterday. And they had Mike Evans back, who did leave with a concussion, and they got Ibuka back, and it didn't really matter. And that's a kudos to the Detroit Lions, because last season, okay, when the Lions' year came to an end, it was, man, maybe this defense wasn't really good enough. And I know Aiden Hutchinson was out for the year. They dealt with an insane amount of injuries. All of those things were a factor. But you looked at the offense and you said, this offense for the Lions is good enough to take us to a Super Bowl. Is this defense good enough? Well, then the Minnesota Vikings came into town, knocked you off your horse, and you go into the offseason going, what was the point of winning 15 games? We couldn't even get to the championship of our own conference, let alone the Super Bowl. Well, then Aaron Glenn, well, both coordinators take a head coaching job, but we're talking defense here. Aaron Glenn then becomes the head coach of the New York Football Jets, which, by the way, might mean that he'll never be the head coach of the Jets again in 12 weeks. That's neither here nor there. And there's question marks all over the place. Was that the best you'll see this Lions team? Then they come out and lose week 1 against the Packers. And you're like, what type of team is this? And look back now 6 weeks, okay? And a tough loss last week against the Chiefs. We understand that, okay? That's a good football team. At the end of the day, to hold Baker Mayfield and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who were the number 1 team in the NFC coming into this contest, top 5 offense in the league coming into this contest, to 9 points, 3 points in the first half. And the only reason why the Bucs scored 3 points because Jared Goff threw a terrible interception that essentially gift-wrapped the Tampa Bay Buccaneers field position enough to get to that field goal. This was a game about the defense for the Detroit Lions. That's a fact. 4 tackles for losses, 4 sacks, and 8 QB hits last night. 12 passes defended. That is an elite stat line. Last number I'll give for you on this game. The Detroit Lions defense had a total of 63 tackles, okay? If you take away Amon-Ra St. Brown into this list because he had to make a tackle on an interception, there were 20-plus players on the Detroit Lions last night that recorded at least 1 sack, and 15-plus players tackles, and 15-plus players that got their hands in at least 2 or more tackles. Why am I telling you that? Because that's an 11-man unit. That's a defense that is going to swarm the football. That's a tough defense to play. When you see the stat sheet spread out that much between QB hits, pass defended, tackles for losses, that's an elite level defense. Kudos to the Lions, who are now 5-2, along with the Buccaneers, who are 5-2, and they sit atop the standings in the NFC alongside the Niners at 5-2, the Eagles at 5-2, and then in theory, the Green Bay Packers are the number 1 seed at 4-1-1, but you also have the Rams at 5-2 and the Seahawks at 5-2. So a lot to be determined in the NFC. On the flip side, later on in the evening, the Seahawks, they defeated the Houston Texans coming off a bye 27-19. It was an game. There's no other way to describe it. There was nothing recklessly spectacular, although the first half for Jackson Smith in Jigba was elite. He finished with 8 receptions, 123, and 1 TD for the entirety of the game. No running game for Houston, and I think that continues to be a problem for this team. Only 56 yards on the ground. The Seahawks, they're not elite in any category, okay? Their defense is solid. Their offense is solid. Their offensive line is solid. Their weapons are solid. Their defensive line is solid. Like, there's nothing that's magnificent for this Seattle team, but they are good enough. I know that sounds wild, but they are good enough, okay? And I don't know how many people thought they were going to be this good, especially with the Sam Darnold signing. Like, he was good last year for Minnesota, but that was 1 year in a flash pan. That was it, okay? So you didn't really know. All right, but now you kind of look back and you're like, this was a great signing for Seattle. Now they got their team at 5-2, and they're playing really good football. Unfortunately, I think Houston, whether it's injury riddled or not that deep or offensive line issues, I don't necessarily know, but it is not elite in Houston. Another scenario where the quarterback was hit 7 times last night, and 10 tackle 4 losses. That's a lot. In like 65 total plays, 10 plays ended in a loss. That's a tough place to be if you're the Houston Texans. We don't got to go deeper into this game. Just know that Seattle on the West Coast, Northwest Coast, is really starting to prove themselves as a potential contender. We're going to take a quick commercial break, okay? When we come back, we will give you the remaining Tuesday top stories, and we're going around the sports world. Got something from golf, got something from soccer, got something from Major League Baseball, and got something from the National Football League. So stick with us here on The Rome Show, broadcasting live on YouTube, Twitter X, Instagram, and Facebook back after this commercial break.
It's the Rome Show!
What is one thing every great leader has in common? They challenge their people to not stop at the first right answer. Tighten the Lug Nuts is a leadership book that will teach you how to move past the first right answer with entertaining and detailed examples founded in real-world concepts and experiences. Accelerate towards your professional goals with Tighten the Lug Nuts, one of the best leadership books available.
Yeah, it's the Rome Show. Welcome back in, broadcasting live on youtube.com/the Romanellas, Twitter X, Instagram, The Rome Show 1, Facebook, The Rome Show. So many places to get the show. Just go get it. Hit follow, hit subscribe, hit something. Okay. But be sure to join us. Hope you liked our new commercial from Tighten the Lug Nuts. You can get a commercial on The Rome Show. Just reach out to us any way you want. DM us, email us, whatever the case is. Reach out. You want a commercial, we'll give you a commercial. You might just have to pay a little moolah, but it goes back into the show so we can have this nice little setup for the people. Thank you to Tighten the Lug Nuts, our sponsor. And by the way, hit the Leadership Library podcast wherever you get your podcast after you're done listening to the Rome Show podcast. That's another good one for you to hear. Let's get into our Tuesday's top stories. All right, number 1, Jack Nicklaus. You know that name. Greatest golfer of all time. 18-time champion. He won a defamation lawsuit. You probably didn't even know this was going on. I didn't, and I found it very interesting. So Jack Nicklaus has designed golf courses for a really long time. The Bear, as they call them, are some of the greatest golf courses you've ever played. Well, in 2007, Jack Nicklaus sold his rights to what's called Nicklaus Companies, which is the company that designs all these golf courses, and really made like $150 million off it. So that the naming rights were him, but the company was not run by him. There was a 5-year non-compete that existed from 2017 to 2022 where he couldn't make any golf courses. Well, apparently, and it's a little bit of a sticky situation, Nicklaus Companies was essentially kind of suing Jack Nicklaus and essentially hurting his reputation, saying that he was suffering from dementia and he shouldn't be doing these things anymore. And they essentially wanted name, image, and likeness for Jack Nicklaus. Well, Mr. Nicklaus wins the lawsuit and essentially not only gains $50 million from what was the company that he started essentially and then sold rights to. Now Nicklaus Companies can't even use the Bear logo, can't use Jack Nicklaus's name. So I feel like oftentimes we hear these stories and it doesn't go well for the person. Like, oh, I can't believe Jack Nicklaus Enterprises is stealing Jack Nicklaus's own name and using it against him. Or have you ever seen the story about McDonald's? I can't believe that guy Ray, whatever his name is, came in and just stole McDonald's. That's what happens. That's unfortunately our world. So kudos to Jack Nicklaus's legal team. The fact that they were able to get this thing settled and not hurt the Bears' elite reputation in the game of golf. So congratulations to Jack Nicklaus, not only winning that lawsuit, but keeping his name clean, which I think is arguably the most important thing. We continue on Major League Baseball. Albert Pujols, Hall of Famer, 500 plus homers, one of the best hitters I've ever seen in my lifetime, has been connected to a few different managerial positions, one being the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim and the other being the San Diego Padres. Recently, the Los Angeles Angels told Pujols that he will no longer be a candidate for their managerial opening, but Pujols will be meeting with the Padres this week. Torrey Hunter, former All-Star for the Los Angeles Angels, as well, was told by the ball club that they are not pursuing him as a manager. According to reports, 8 different people still remain as options for the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim. If you missed the first part of the show, okay, go check the podcast out wherever you get your podcast. Or, excuse me, if you missed yesterday's show, we talked a little bit about the Dodgers ruining baseball, yada, yada, yada. See, I don't think it matters who the Angels hire as their manager. It doesn't. I don't think it matters at all. Is their front office going to spend the right money? Is their front office going to build the team appropriately? Is their front office going to prove to be a team that changed its name from Anaheim to Los Angeles to get the moniker of LA so they can get a little bit more, and they've done nothing with it? What's it going to be? Because I don't think it matters. Didn't matter you re-signed Mike Trout. Didn't matter you had Shohei Ohtani who left. That franchise just doesn't do enough. And it's going to be consistently in 70 to 85 win territory unless the upper management changes. So the Angels not going with Pujols, but I don't know what they're going with because that franchise has been a question mark for plenty of years. Tony Vitello, speaking of California pro baseball teams, is the leader in the clubhouse for the San Francisco Giants head managerial vacancy. If you're wondering who the hell is Tony Vitello is the head ball coach of the Tennessee Volunteers college baseball team and is the leader in the clubhouse for the San Francisco Giants managerial position. The Giants have won 1 NL West pennant in the last 13 seasons. Okay. We went on a run where every 2 years, 12, 14, 16, the Giants were winning a World Series. Now, 9 years later, they've been in the playoffs one time. Okay. And they've gone through a few different managers. There's been a lot of question marks. Now, famous catcher Busty Poser is the director of baseball operations there and is trying to make a splash signing so that we can get this thing back steering in the right direction. I don't know if Vitello's the right decision. I don't know if any college baseball coach is the right decision. I don't know if that jump equates. I mean, heck, we haven't even seen that jump equate really in pro football, which is probably the most like two situations. College football, probably the most like two situations. I don't see it working in baseball, okay? I think Tony Vitello's energy, the way he goes about things, who he is it really fits the college game. But we'll see. Right now, it's just speculations and rumors. But as it stands, Tony Vitello, head baseball coach at Tennessee University of Tennessee, is the leader in the clubhouse for the San Francisco Giants job. Your next storyline. Let's go to the pitch, as the people would say, and football, as the other people would say. For the first time since 2003, the United States has won a World Cup hosting bid. Now, this bid for 2031 is a shared bid with a few different North American countries. However, it gives us some hosting for the Women's World Cup. We've hosted in 1999, famous World Cup, where what's-her-name, Brandi Chastain, took her shirt off after hitting the penalty kick to win. 2003, okay, and now it'll almost be 28 years since the Women's World Cup was last hosted in the United States, coming back in 2031. Finally, it doesn't look like it's getting any better for the Baltimore Ravens coming out of their bye week. Lamar Jackson looks like he's still going to be shelved with that hamstring injury So, you kind of get to week 7 and week 8 of this thing, and you're looking at some of these teams like it's over. Like it's over. Like there's the Jets, it's over. The Dolphins, it's over. The Titans, it's over. Okay, that's a frustrating place to be. It really is. Like football season's so much fun for so many people, and after 6-7 weeks, your team is so bad. Okay, you don't even want to watch it, and that's what's even worse. It's even worse for the Ravens fan because, like, you thought you were a Super Bowl contender. Now you're sitting here at 1-6 or 1-5, and you don't even know if your MVP quarterback is going to come back the rest of the way. That's a tough place to be. Like, you knew the Titans were going to be bad. You had a feeling the Jets were going to be bad. Okay, but the Ravens, even the Dolphins, some of these teams, like the Houston Texans are 2-4. They were in the playoffs each of the last 2 years. Like, they're not expecting this. This is not what they set up to do. And I think it couldn't be any more worse for the Baltimore Ravens, who were a clear cut for a lot of people favorite in the AFC to get to the Super Bowl. And now, I don't know, they're looking at a favorite to be a top 5 pick, which is wild to think. A lot of questions to answer in Baltimore. The first one being most likely that Lamar Jackson is not playing football this weekend. Those are your Tuesday top stories here on the Rome Show. If you have a top story, you got to comment on a top story, you want to let us know a top story, you just got to go to the Romanellas on YouTube, the Rome Show 1 on Twitter, X, and Instagram, or the Rome Show on Facebook, and you can give us your thoughts, your stories, or your whatever. Ladies, thank you for tuning in to the Rome Show here. We'll be back on Wednesday, Hump Day, to break down all the latest in the sports world. I am Andrew Romanella. You have an electric Tuesday, and until tomorrow, peace.
Thank you for listening.